My daughter's fiancé told me on the phone, "We only want important people at our wedding," and hung up laughing. I said nothing. I didn't scream, I didn't beg. I simply hung up the phone and made a few quiet calls. By the time the sun rose the next morning over Newport, 13 vendors had canceled, and the groom realized he wasn't just groomless, he was bankrupt. Before I tell you how I dismantled a $500,000 wedding in 3 hours, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps me share these stories of justice. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated by someone who was spending your money? My name is Thomas Sterling. I am 72 years old. For 40 years, I ran one of the largest logistics and shipping supply chains on the East Coast. I spent my life moving millions of tons of steel and grain across oceans. I know how to make things move, and more importantly, I know how to make things stop. When you control the supply chain, you learn that the most powerful person in the room isn't the one shouting, it is the one with his hand on the valve. I was sitting in a suite at the Hotel Viking in Newport, Rhode Island. It was 9 o'clock at night the evening before the wedding. The room was luxurious, but it was quiet. Too quiet. I was alone. I looked down at the coffee table, where a checkbook lay open. The last check I had signed was still fresh in the ledger. $500,000. That was the total cost of the fairy tale wedding my daughter Emily and her fiancé Braden had demanded. Braden Cole. 32 years old. A self-proclaimed tech visionary who ran a cryptocurrency startup that, as far as I could tell, had never made a single dollar of actual profit. He was handsome in that slick, polished way that makes old men like me instinctively check for our wallets. He drove a leased Porsche. He wore watches that cost more than my first house. And he treated me with the kind of patronizing patience one might reserve for a slow child. I wasn't staying at the resort where the wedding was being held. Braden had told me weeks ago that the resort was fully booked for the wedding party and their VIP guests. He said it would be better if I stayed in town, that it would be quieter for me. At the time, I accepted it. I thought he was being considerate of my age. I didn't realize then that I was being sequestered. I picked up my glass of whiskey and took a sip. I needed to make one final check. My older brother Peter was coming to the wedding. Peter is a Vietnam veteran. He lost his left leg in '68, and now he is confined to a large motorized wheelchair. He is the best man I know, and he is the only family I have left besides Emily. I needed to ensure the seating arrangement at the main table had enough clearance for Peter's chair. I had asked Emily about it 3 times, but in the chaos of wedding planning, she had brushed me off. I picked up my phone and dialed Braden. I knew Emily would be asleep or getting her beauty rest, but Braden would be awake. The phone rang 4 times before he picked up. The background noise was deafening. Thumping bass, screaming laughter, the sound of glass breaking. The bachelor party was clearly still in full swing, even though the wedding was less than 12 hours away. "Thomas," he shouted over the noise. "What is it?" "It is late, old man. Shouldn't you be drinking warm milk?" I ignored the jab. "Braden, I need to confirm the seating chart for the reception tomorrow. My brother Peter needs aisle access at the family table. His wheelchair is wide." There was a pause on the other end. Then I heard a muffled sound, like he was covering the microphone to laugh with someone. "Yeah, about that," Thomas Braden said, his voice dripping with a casual cruelty that made my grip tighten on the glass. "We made some changes to the floor plan this afternoon." "Changes?" I asked. "What kind of changes?" "Well, the ballroom got a little tight," Braden said. "We had some last-minute RSVPs from some heavy hitters, angel investors, crypto whales, people who can really blow up my company valuation. So we had to shift things around." "Shift things around? How, Braden?" "We moved the family table. You and your brother and those cousins from Ohio. You guys are going to be in the annex." The annex. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. The annex wasn't a ballroom. It was a glorified conference room down the hall from the main event. It had no view of the ocean. It had no view of the head table. It was where they put the storage crates during the off-season. "You are putting the father of the bride in a storage room," I asked, my voice low and steady. "Don't be dramatic, Thomas." Braden sighed. "It is a nice room. We put a speaker in there so you can hear the speeches. You just won't be able to see them." I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark harbor. "Braden, I paid for this wedding. My name is on the contract for the venue. I am the host. My brother is a war hero. We are sitting in the ballroom." Braden laughed. It was a cold, ugly sound. "Look, let me be honest with you, Thomas." He lowered his voice, but the arrogance was loud and clear. "This wedding isn't just a wedding. It is a networking event. It is my brand launch. And frankly, you and your brother don't fit the brand. Peter drools when he eats. You wear suits that look like they are from 1980. It kills the vibe." He took a breath, and then he delivered the line that would end his life as he knew it. "We only want important people in the main room, Thomas. The investors, the influencers, the future. You guys are the past. You are just the wallet. So just sit in the annex, eat the lobster I am letting you have, and stay out of the photos." I stood there frozen. The phone felt heavy in my hand. Important people. The lobster he was letting me have. "Braden," I started to say. "I have to go, Thomas." Braden interrupted. "My VIPs are waiting. Just show up on time to walk Emily down the aisle, and then fade into the background. That is your job." The line went dead. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I slowly lowered the phone to the table. I sat down in the leather armchair. I looked at the checkbook. Thomas Sterling, client. I looked at the stack of contracts I had brought with me just in case. Venue contract. Client Thomas Sterling. Catering contract. Client Thomas Sterling. Floral design. Client Thomas Sterling. Live band. Client Thomas Sterling. Braden thought he was the groom. He thought he was the star. But in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of the bank, he was nobody. He was a guest. I was the client. He wanted important people. He wanted the people who mattered. He had forgotten the golden rule of business. The most important person is the one who signs the check. I took a sip of my whiskey. It burned on the way down, good and sharp. He thought I was a senile old man, a clueless fossil who would just roll over and take the disrespect because I loved my daughter. And I did love Emily. I loved her enough to pay $500,000 for her happiness. But I loved her too much to let her marry a man who would treat her father and her disabled uncle like garbage. If he treated me this way while I was holding the checkbook, imagine how he would treat her once the money was gone. I looked at my watch. It was 9:15 p.m. The wedding was scheduled for noon the next day. The vendors would be starting their setups at 6 a.m. I had time. I opened my contact list. I didn't call Emily. She was likely asleep, or worse, she knew about this and had agreed to it. That thought hurt more than Braden's insults, but I pushed it aside. I would deal with my daughter later. Right now, I had a supply chain to disrupt. I took another sip of whiskey. I felt a cold calm settling over me. It was the same feeling I used to get right before I acquired a rival shipping company. The feeling of absolute control. Braden wanted a wedding for important people. Well, I was about to show him exactly how important I was. I sat back in the leather armchair, and the silence of the hotel room felt heavier than before. The whiskey glass was empty, but I didn't pour another. I needed a clear head. Canceling the venue would be just the first domino. There were so many others standing in a neat, expensive row waiting to fall. I looked at the checkbook lying open on the coffee table. The numbers, written in my handwriting, seemed to mock me. $500,000. $500,000. It wasn't the money that bothered me. I have made more than that in a single shipping contract. I have lost more than that on bad weather delays in the Atlantic. Money is a tool. Money is fuel. But money is also a language. And for the last 6 months, my daughter and her fiancé had been speaking it very loudly, while I had been too deaf to hear what they were actually saying. I closed my eyes, and the memories of the last 6 months played out like a bad movie. I remembered the day Emily brought Braden home. She was glowing. She looked at him with the adoration that I used to see in her eyes when she looked at me. But that changed quickly. I remembered the dinner at the yacht club 3 months ago. We were discussing the wine list for the reception. I had suggested a very respectable Cabernet that cost $80 a bottle. It was a good wine, a wine I would serve to my own board of directors. Emily had frowned. She didn't look at me. She looked at Braden. And Braden had sighed that long, suffering sigh of a genius forced to deal with idiots. "Thomas," he had said, swirling his glass, "we are trying to attract a certain caliber of guest here. These are crypto whales. These are guys who made 10 million before breakfast. We can't serve them supermarket wine. We need the 1990 vintage. It shows sophistication. It shows we are liquid." And Emily had chimed in immediately, her voice taking on that whine she used when she was 5 years old and wanted a pony. "Daddy, please. Braden knows what he is doing. He needs this for networking. It is an investment in our future. Don't you want us to be successful?" Investment. That was their favorite word. The imported orchids from Italy for $75,000 were an investment. The custom silk napkins were an investment. The ice sculptures of swans pouring vodka were an investment. I had signed every check. I had nodded. I had told myself that I was being a good father, that I was supporting my little girl's dream. I told myself that Braden was just ambitious and maybe a little arrogant, but he made her happy. I was a fool. I was the old ox pulling the cart while they sat in the back and whipped me to go faster. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dim room. I needed to see the paperwork. I needed to see the chains of command. I logged into my secure email server. I have a folder labeled Wedding. It had over 300 emails in it. I clicked on the contract for the breakers. It was a PDF document 40 pages long. I scrolled to the signature page. There it was. Client name Thomas Sterling. Signature Thomas Sterling. Responsible party Thomas Sterling. I clicked on the catering contract. $200,000 for lobster thermidor and Wagyu beef sliders. Client Thomas Sterling. I clicked on the florist. The lighting design. The security team. The valet service. Thomas Sterling. Thomas Sterling. Thomas Sterling. My name was on every single document that mattered. My credit rating was the foundation of this entire event. Without my signature, Braden was just a man standing in a field yelling at clouds, but then I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was a notification from Instagram. I don't use social media often. I only created an account because Emily insisted it was the best way to see the wedding updates. I unlocked my phone. The screen opened to Braden's profile. He had just posted a story. It was 10 minutes ago. He was likely still at the bachelor party, probably laughing about the conversation we just had. The image on the screen was slick. It was a digital animation of gold dust swirling around to form letters. It was the final digital invitation, the one meant for his VIP guests, the important people he had mentioned on the phone. I put on my reading glasses. I leaned in close. The graphics were impressive. I am sure they cost a fortune. Probably another expense hidden in the miscellaneous category of the budget I paid for. The text faded into view. Braden Cole and Emily Sterling. I waited. I waited to see the rest. Usually a wedding invitation follows a protocol. Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Sterling request the honor of your presence. Or even simpler. together with their families. But the words didn't change. Braden Cole and Emily Sterling invite the innovators, the disruptors, and the elite to witness the merger of the century. I stared at the screen. I refreshed the page, thinking there must be a mistake. Thinking maybe the internet connection in the hotel was slow and the rest of the text hadn't loaded. But it wasn't the internet. My name wasn't there. My wife's name, the woman who had carried Emily, who had nursed her, who had died wishing for this day, wasn't there. We had been erased. We had been scrubbed from the narrative. To Braden, and apparently to my daughter, I wasn't the host. I wasn't the father. I wasn't even a person. I was an ATM. I was a bank account with a pulse. I was a resource to be mined until it was empty, and then discarded in the annex with the storage crates. I looked at the invitation again. The merger of the century. They weren't treating this as a marriage. They were treating it as a corporate acquisition. And in this acquisition, I was the silent partner who was being forced out before the IPO. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. It wasn't anger anymore. Anger is hot. Anger makes you shout. This was something else. This was the cold clarity of a businessman who realizes a contract has been breached in bad faith. They wanted the prestige of the venue, but not the man who paid for it. They wanted the luxury of the food, but not the family who put it on the table. I remembered the phone call again. We only want important people in the main room, Thomas. Important people. I looked at the checkbook. I looked at the contracts on my laptop. I looked at the digital invitation that had erased my existence. He was right. He only wanted important people. But he had made a fatal calculation error. He assumed importance was measured by Twitter followers and crypto wallets. He didn't understand that in the real world, importance is measured by leverage, and I held all the leverage. I closed the laptop with a snap. It sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. I wasn't going to the wedding. I realized that now. I wasn't going to walk Emily down the aisle. How could I? How could I give her away to a man who saw me as nothing more than a wallet? And how could I walk beside a daughter who had allowed her father to be humiliated and erased? No, I wasn't going to the wedding. And if I wasn't going, neither was anyone else. It was 11 o'clock at night, and the silence in my hotel room had become suffocating. I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, not with the excitement of a father about to give his daughter away, but with the cold, calculating hum of a machine that had detected a fault in the system. I had already made the calls. The wedding was technically dead. But a part of me, the part that had been a father for 27 years, needed to be absolutely sure. I needed to see the enemy on his own ground. I put on my coat and grabbed my car keys. I told myself I was going to the venue to check the wheelchair accessibility for my brother Peter one last time. It was a flimsy excuse. Peter wasn't going to be there because there wasn't going to be a wedding. But I needed a reason to drive to the breakers. I needed to look the beast in the eye. The drive to the mansion was short. The Newport air was thick with salt and money. The streets were quiet, lined with gas lamps and hedges that cost more than most people's cars. I pulled up to the service gate of the breakers. The main gate was closed, but I knew there would be activity inside. A security guard stepped out of the booth. He looked tired and annoyed, ready to turn away a lost tourist. He shone a flashlight into my car. "Sir, the property is closed for a private event," he started to say. I rolled down the window. The light hit my face. "I know it is closed," I said, my voice low. "I am the private event. I am Thomas Sterling." The guard hesitated. He lowered the flashlight. He looked at his clipboard, then back at me. He recognized the name. It was the name on his paycheck for the weekend. "Mr. Sterling," he said, straightening up. "I am sorry, sir. I didn't expect you. The groom and his party are still inside doing a final walkthrough." "Let me in," I said. I need to check the ADA ramp at the north entrance. My brother is coming tomorrow, and I want to make sure it is clear." "Of course, sir. Go right ahead." The gate buzzed and swung open. I drove through the gravel, crunching softly under my tires. I parked in the shadows away from the main entrance where a cluster of expensive sports cars were parked. Braden's leased Porsche was there right in the front. I got out of the car. The mansion loomed above me, a massive pile of stone and history built by the Vanderbilts to show the world how rich they were. Now it was being rented by a fraud to show the world how rich he pretended to be. I walked towards the side entrance, the one near the ballroom bar. I knew the layout perfectly. I had paid for the floor plan. I moved quietly. Years of walking through shipyards at night to catch lazy foremen had taught me how to move without making a sound. As I got closer, I heard music. Not the elegant string quartet Emily had wanted, but loud thumping bass and voices, loud, boisterous male voices echoing off the stone walls. I slipped through the service door. The hallway was dim, lined with portraits of dead tycoons. I walked until I saw the light spilling out from the bar area adjacent to the ballroom. I stopped in the shadows of a large marble pillar. I had a clear view. There were 5 of them, Braden and his groomsmen. They were sitting around a table that was covered in bottles. My bottles. They were drinking the 30-year-old scotch I had specially ordered for the toast. They had their jackets off, their ties loosened, and they looked like kings of the world. Braden was standing on a chair holding a glass high. His face was flushed. He looked triumphant. To the sterling account, he shouted, and they all laughed, clinking their glasses. I stayed frozen. I listened. "You guys have no idea," Braden said, stepping down from the chair and leaning in close to his friends. The voice carried perfectly in the cavernous room. "This wedding is the golden key. The moment I say I do tomorrow, the merger is real." One of his friends, a guy named Josh, who I knew had been arrested for securities fraud 2 years ago, laughed. "You mean the marriage, Braden?" "No, I mean the merger," Braden corrected him, a smirk playing on his lips. "Marriage is for suckers. This is a business acquisition." He took a swig of the scotch and wiped his mouth. "Look, the crypto market is tanking. We all know that. My liquidity is dried up. I have creditors breathing down my neck who don't send letters, they send guys with baseball bats. But tomorrow, that all changes." Howe asked another friend. "Because tomorrow," Braden said, his eyes gleaming with the manic energy of a con artist selling a monorail, "I become the son-in-law of Thomas Sterling. Do you know what that name means in the logistics world? It means trust. It means stability. It means old money." He paused for effect, looking around his circle of sycophants. "I have the press release ready to go at noon. As soon as the rings are on, Thomas Sterling joins the board of my new coin venture as senior strategic advisor. We are going to pivot to supply chain blockchain solutions." I felt the blood drain from my face. He wasn't just marrying my daughter for her inheritance. He was planning to skin my reputation and wear it like a suit. He was going to use my 40 years of hard work to legitimize a scam. "But does he know?" Josh asked. "Does the old man know he is an advisor?" Braden laughed. It was the same laugh I had heard on the phone earlier, the laugh that sealed his fate. Thomas Braden scoffed. "That clueless old man. He doesn't know what a blockchain is. He thinks the cloud is something in the sky. He just signs the checks, boys. He is a dinosaur, a wallet with legs." But what if he finds out someone pressed? What if he reads the prospectus? "He won't read it," Braden said dismissively. "And even if he does, it will be too late. By the time he figures it out, we will have raised $10 million from investors who trust the Sterling name. We take the money, we pay off my debts, we funnel the rest into offshore accounts, and then the company sadly goes bankrupt due to market volatility." "Oops?" And Emily, Josh asked. "What about the blushing bride?" Braden waved his hand as if swatting away a fly. "Emily is the easy part. I have her wrapped around my finger. She is desperate to be a power couple. She thinks I am the next Elon Musk. I tell her jump, she asks how high. She won't ask questions as long as I keep buying her nice things. And if her dad makes a fuss, she will take my side. She always does. He raised his glass again. So here is to Thomas Sterling, the greatest investor I never asked for. May he rest in peace or at least stay quiet in the nursing home soon. They roared with laughter. They clinked their glasses again, spilling my expensive scotch on the floor I had paid to polish. I stood there in the dark. The coldness I had felt in the hotel room spread through my entire body. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't even anger. It was something far more dangerous. It was the feeling of a CEO looking at a bad investment and realizing it was time to liquidate the asset. He wasn't just a bad fiancé. He was a predator. He was planning to commit securities fraud using my name. He was planning to rob investors. He was planning to ruin my legacy. The legacy I had built to leave to Emily. And he thought I was clueless. He thought I was a dinosaur. I looked at him one last time. He looked so confident, so sure of his victory. He had no idea that the ground beneath his feet had already been mined and the fuse was burning. I didn't step out of the shadows. I didn't confront him. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing my anger. If I walked out there now, he would spin it. He would lie. He would gaslight me. No. I needed to be smarter. I needed to be the strategist he claimed I wasn't. I turned around slowly. My shoes made no sound on the marble. I walked back down the hallway, past the portraits of the captains of industry who had built this country. I felt a kinship with them. They knew how to deal with pirates. I walked out the service door into the cool night air. The ocean breeze hit my face. I took a deep breath, inhaling the salt. I walked back to my car. I got in and started the engine. As I drove away from the breakers, I didn't look back at the mansion. I looked at the road ahead. I wasn't a heartbroken father anymore. I wasn't a victim. I was Thomas Sterling, and I was about to manage the most aggressive, hostile takeover defense of my career. The drive back to the hotel was smooth. The city was sleeping, unaware of the storm that was coming. Braden wanted to use my reputation to raise $10 million. He wanted to use my name. Well, tomorrow he was going to get my name. He was going to get the full weight of it. And it was going to crush him. I walked back into my hotel suite and closed the heavy door behind me. The latch clicked with a sound of finality that echoed in the empty room. It was 1 a.m. The city of Newport was asleep outside my window, the harbor lights blinking in the distance, indifferent to the storm that was brewing inside this room. My heart was no longer racing. The adrenaline from the encounter at the mansion had settled into a cold, hard resolve. I poured myself a glass of water. I didn't need alcohol. I needed clarity. I needed precision. I sat at the mahogany desk and opened my laptop again. The blue light illuminated my face, casting long shadows across the room. I picked up my phone and dialed Rachel Goldstein. Rachel has been my personal attorney and corporate counsel for 30 years. She is a woman who sleeps 4 hours a night and eats nails for breakfast. She doesn't have a family. She has clients. And I am her biggest client. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was crisp, alert, as if she had been sitting by the phone waiting for a command. "Thomas," she said, "it is 1 a.m. You are supposed to be sleeping before the big day. Who do I need to sue?" I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Rachel," I said, "I need you to open a file. Target is Braden Cole." I heard the sound of typing on the other end. She didn't ask why, she just started working. "I need a full financial forensic audit," I continued. "I want to know everything. His assets, his liabilities, his credit score, every loan he has taken out in the last 5 years." And Rachel dig deep. Look for the things that don't show up on a standard credit report. There was a pause. The typing stopped for a second. You think he is dirty, Thomas? She asked. I know he is, I said. I just heard him admit to a room full of drunks that he plans to use my name to launch a fraudulent securities offering on Monday morning. He calls it a merger. I call it a Ponzi scheme. I need the ammunition to bury him before he can dig the hole. Give me 30 minutes, Rachel said. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence. I looked at the checkbook on the table. $500,000. It was a lot of money to burn. But it was cheaper than the cost of my reputation. It was cheaper than the cost of my daughter's future tied to a felon. I waited. I watched the minutes tick by on the digital clock. 1:10, 1:20, 1:30. Exactly 30 minutes later, my phone rang. I put it on speaker. Tell me, I said. Thomas, Rachel said, and her voice had lost its crisp edge. It was lower now. Serious. Dangerous. You were right. But it is worse than you think. Much worse. How bad? I asked. He is insolvent, Thomas. Completely underwater. He has 28 credit cards maxed out. His Porsche is up for repossession next week. He hasn't paid rent on his penthouse in 3 months. But that is just the surface. Go on. He has a judgment against him from a private equity firm in New York for fraud. But he has managed to keep it quiet. And Thomas, he owes money to private lenders. You mean loan sharks? I asked. I mean entities that operate outside the banking system, Rachel said carefully. High interest, short terms, physical collateral. He owes $2 million. $2 million. The number hung in the air. That explains the desperation, I said. That explains why he needs the VIPs. Exactly, Rachel said. I looked into his company structure. It is a shell game. He has zero liquidity. He has been telling his creditors that he has a major capital injection coming next week. He has been using your name, Thomas. He showed them a prospectus listing you as a guarantor. I felt a surge of rage, but I pushed it down. Rage is useless. Action is everything. So the wedding, I said, connecting the dots. The wedding is the closing ceremony, Rachel confirmed. It is a show. He needs those investors in the room. He needs them to see you walking Emily down the aisle. He needs the photos. He needs the validation. If he pulls this off, if he gets them to sign the checks on Monday, he pays off the sharks and lives to scam another day. And if he doesn't, I asked. If the money doesn't come through by Monday close of business, Rachel said, he is a dead man walking. The sharks will come for him. The bank will seize everything. He goes to prison or the hospital. I leaned back in my chair. So he isn't marrying Emily because he loves her, I said softly. He is marrying her because she is his human shield. It appears so, Rachel said. I looked at the contracts on the table, the venue, the catering, the flowers. Rachel, I said, I need you to review the cancellation clauses on the wedding contracts. All of them. I already did, she said. I have them in front of me. You are the sole signatory. You are the client of record. Can I cancel? I asked. You can, she said. You will lose the deposits. It will cost you about $150,000 in penalties. But legally, you have the right to terminate the services for convenience at any time prior to the event. And Braden, I asked, can he stop me? Can he sue? He has no standing, Rachel said. His name isn't on the checks. He is a beneficiary, not a party to the contract. He can scream, but he can't sue. Good, I said. Thomas, Rachel said, her voice softening slightly. If you do this, you are going to nuke the wedding. You are going to humiliate Emily. I know, I said. But if I let this go forward, I am letting him sell her into a nightmare. I am letting him use my family as collateral for a crime. I would rather she hate me for ruining a party than hate me for letting her marry a monster. Understood, Rachel said. She was back to being the shark. What are your instructions? Draft a lawsuit, I said. Fraud, misrepresentation, unauthorized use of likeness. I want a restraining order ready to be served on Monday morning. I want to lock down his ability to use my name anywhere. Consider it done. Anything else? Yes, I said. I am going to handle the logistics of the cancellation personally. I want to make sure the message is received loud and clear. Be careful, Thomas Rachel warned. A desperate man is a dangerous man. I am not afraid of him, I said. He thinks he is a wolf. He is about to find out he is just a sheep who wandered into a bear's den. I hung up the phone. $2 million in debt. Loan sharks. Fraud. My daughter was sleeping in a hotel room 5 miles away, dreaming of a perfect life, unaware that her Prince Charming was building a castle on a foundation of dynamite. I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked out at the dark city. If the wedding happens, he wins. If the wedding happens, the investors sign the checks. If the wedding happens, my legacy becomes his piggy bank. So the wedding must not happen. It wasn't enough to just not show up. I had to erase the event. I had to turn his stage into a graveyard. I had to make sure that when those VIPs arrived tomorrow, they didn't see a merger. They needed to see a bankruptcy. I sat back down at the desk. I opened the spreadsheet of vendors. 13 names, 13 phone numbers, 13 pillars holding up Braden's house of cards. I cracked my knuckles. I took a deep breath. It was time to go to work. I picked up the phone and dialed the first number. It was time to show Braden Cole exactly what happens when you try to cut the important people out of the deal. Hello, I said to the empty room. Let's start the demolition. It was 2:00 in the morning. The city of Newport was dead silent outside my window, but inside my hotel suite the air was electric with the energy of a controlled demolition. I sat at the mahogany desk with the spreadsheet open on my laptop. 13 names, 13 phone numbers, 13 structural pillars holding up the stage for Braden Cole's fraud. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is a hot, messy emotion that makes you make mistakes. I was cold. I was operating with the clinical detachment of a surgeon cutting out a tumor. I had built a logistics empire by knowing exactly where the choke points were in any supply chain. Tonight, I was going to choke them all. I picked up the phone. My hand was steady. I dialed the first number on the list. It was Michael, the general manager of the Breakers. I knew he would be in his office. The night before a wedding of this magnitude, the venue manager never sleeps. He answered on the first ring, his voice tight with the stress I had already inflicted with my earlier call. "Mr. Sterling," he said, "please tell me you are calling to rescind the cancellation order. We have trucks backed up at the service entrance." "Hello, Michael," I said. My voice was low and flat. "I am not rescinding anything. I am confirming the execution of the contract termination clause." There was a desperate silence on the other end. "Sir, you have to understand," Michael pleaded. "The cancellation fee is 100%. You have already paid a deposit of $150,000. If you cancel now, you lose every cent of that. It is gone. You are burning money." I looked at the checkbook on the table. "I accept the loss, Michael," I said. "I accept the penalty. Keep the deposit. Consider it a donation to the Preservation Society. But here is my instruction. I want the gates locked." "Locked, sir." "Chained," I clarified. "I want industrial chains on the main gate and the service gate. I want the property sealed. No one enters the Breakers tomorrow morning. Not the staff, not the guests, and certainly not the groom." "But Mr. Cole has been calling me every 10 minutes, Michael said, his voice rising in panic. He is threatening to sue us. He says he is the groom and he demands the gates be open. I leaned back in my chair. Read the contract, Michael. Look at the signature line on page 42. Whose name is there? Yours, sir. Thomas Sterling. Exactly. I am the client. I am the signatory. Braden Cole is a guest. He has no legal standing to demand anything. If you open those gates for him, you are breaching a contract with me, and I will sue you for everything you own. Do you understand? I heard him swallow hard over the line. I understand, Mr. Sterling. The gates will remain locked. Good. Post security at the perimeter. If anyone tries to climb the fence, have them arrested for trespassing. I hung up. One down. The fortress was sealed. Now to starve the army. I dialed the second number. Sarah, the head of the catering company. She picked up immediately. I could hear the clatter of pots and pans in the background, the shouting of sous chefs. Sarah, I said. It is Thomas Sterling. Mr. Sterling, she gasped. We are loading the vans. The Wagyu beef is seared. The lobsters are prepped. We are on schedule. Stop the trucks, Sarah. Sir. Stop the trucks, I repeated. The event is cancelled. But the food, she cried. Mr. Sterling, we have 300 portions of A5 Wagyu beef. We have truffles flown in from France. This is $200,000 worth of food. It is perishable. It will go to waste. It won't go to waste, I said. I want you to redirect the convoy. Redirect to where, sir? To another venue. No. I want you to drive the trucks to the St. Mary's shelter in downtown Newport. The homeless shelter, she asked, her voice stunned. Yes. I want you to unload every ounce of that beef and every tail of those lobsters at the shelter kitchen. I will pay for the overtime for your staff to serve it. Feed the veterans. Feed the families who have nothing. But Sarah listened to me closely. I am listening, sir. Not a single crumb of that food is to go to the breakers. If I find out that Braden Cole ate so much as a dinner roll, I will contest the entire invoice. Do we have an understanding? There was a long pause. I could hear her processing the madness of it all. Yes, Mr. Sterling. We will feed the shelter. It will be the most expensive meal they ever had. Send me the receipt, I said. I hung up. The venue was locked. The food was gone. Now to kill the atmosphere. I called the florist. $75,000 in white orchids and imported roses. Cancel it, I said. But sir, the arrangements are already built. Send them to the Newport Hospital. Fill the nurses' stations. Fill the waiting rooms. Put a rose in every room in the oncology ward. Just get them away from the wedding. I called the lighting company. I called the rental agency that was providing the gold Chiavari chairs. I called the company that was bringing the vintage Rolls-Royce for the getaway car. Cancel, cancel, cancel. The conversations were all the same. Shock, disbelief, warnings about the financial penalties. I didn't care about the penalties. I was buying my dignity back, and dignity is expensive. By 3:30 in the morning, I had made 12 calls. I had dismantled a $500,000 production piece by piece. There was only one call left. The band. The 12-piece jazz orchestra from New York City. They were expensive. They were famous. And they were currently asleep in a hotel down the street, preparing for a noon sound check. I dialed the band leader. He answered groggily. Hello? This is Thomas Sterling. Go back to sleep. Excuse me. The gig is off. I have wired your full fee plus a cancellation bonus to your agency account. Pack your instruments and go back to New York. Is this a joke? He asked, waking up. Check your bank account, I said. I heard him fumbling with a phone, then a low whistle. Okay, Mr. Sterling. The money is there. We are leaving in the morning. Do not go to the venue, I warned. Do not set up a single microphone. Understood, sir. Thank you for the bonus. I hung up the phone. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. The room was silent again, but it felt different now. It wasn't the heavy silence of waiting. It was the empty silence of a battlefield after the artillery has stopped firing. I had done it. I had effectively incinerated $500,000 in 4 hours. The venue was locked. The food was at a homeless shelter. The flowers were at a hospital. The band was going home. When the sun rose in 2 hours, Braden Cole would wake up thinking he was the king of the world. He would put on his tuxedo. He would rehearse his speech to the investors. He would drive to the breakers expecting to see a fairy tale. Instead, he was going to find a chain on the gate and a ghost town. He wanted a wedding for important people. He wanted to exclude the old man who wrote the checks because I didn't fit his brand. I stood up and walked to the minibar. I took out a small bottle of whiskey. I poured it into a glass without ice. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark harbor. The first hint of gray was touching the horizon. The day was coming. The day of reckoning. I raised the glass to the reflection of my own tired face in the window. You wanted to erase me, Braden, I whispered. You wanted me to be invisible. Well, I just made your entire future invisible. I took a sip of the whiskey. It tasted like victory. Cold, hard, expensive victory. Good luck with the important people, Braden. I finished the drink and set the glass down on the table next to the checkbook. I didn't close the checkbook. I left it open to the stub of the check that had started all of this. I went into the bathroom and turned on the shower. I needed to shave. I needed to dress. I wasn't going to a wedding today. I was going to an execution, and I wanted to look my best. 7 o'clock in the morning. The sun rose over Newport with a brilliance that felt almost insulting. It was a perfect day. The sky was a piercing robin egg blue without a single cloud to mar the horizon. The ocean sparkled like a field of diamonds. It was the kind of weather brides pray for, the kind of weather that makes photographers weep with joy. It was a beautiful day for a wedding. It was also a beautiful day for a reckoning. I stood on the balcony of my hotel suite holding a cup of black coffee. The steam rose in the cool morning air. I watched the city wake up. Delivery trucks were moving. Tourists were starting to line up for breakfast. The world was turning just as it always did, completely unaware that a few miles away, a disaster was waiting to happen, behind a locked iron gate. I felt calm. It was a strange sensation. For the last 6 months, I had felt anxious, marginalized, and small. I had felt like an accessory to my own life. But this morning that feeling was gone. It had been replaced by the cold steel of certainty. I had pulled the trigger. The bullet was already in the air. Now all I had to do was watch it hit the target. I went back inside and picked up my phone. There was a text message. It had come in at 6:45 a.m. It was from Emily. I stared at her name on the screen. For a split second, a flicker of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe she had realized. Maybe she had woken up and thought about her father. Maybe she was calling to say she loved me, to say she wanted me walking beside her, because I was her dad, not because I was her financier. I opened the message. Daddy. Good morning. Today is the big day, just a few reminders. Please make sure you arrive on time, but please use the service entrance near the annex. We don't want to clutter the main foyer when the investors start arriving. And please, Daddy, try not to tell those old stories about the shipyard. Braden's partners are very high-level tech people. They won't understand manual labor stories. It is embarrassing. Love you. I read it once, then I read it again. Embarrassing. Manual labor stories. Service entrance. The flicker of hope didn't just die. It was extinguished like a cigarette crushed under a boot. I didn't reply. What was there to say? She had made her position clear. She was ashamed of me. She was ashamed of the hard work that had paid for her private schools, her horses, her education, and this very wedding. She wanted the money, but she didn't want the man who earned it. She wanted the lifestyle, but she didn't want the history. I placed the phone face down on the table. I walked to the closet. Braden had made a joke last night about my suits. He said I looked like I was from 1980. He thought I was a dinosaur in an ill-fitting polyester blend. He was about to see what a dinosaur looks like when he decides to bite. I reached into the garment bag I had brought with me. I hadn't brought the beige linen suit Emily had suggested. She wanted me to blend into the wallpaper to look harmless and soft. Instead, I pulled out a suit I had commissioned in Milan 3 months ago. It was a bespoke tuxedo cut from midnight blue vicuña wool. It cost $12,000. It was sharp, modern, and aggressive. It was the kind of suit you wear to close a hostile takeover. The kind of suit you wear when you are the most powerful man in the room. I dressed slowly, giving every detail my full attention. I put on the shirt, Egyptian cotton crisp and white as fresh snow. I fastened the onyx studs. I tied the bow tie, not a clip-on, a real tie. I adjusted the cuffs. Then I opened the small velvet box on the dresser. Inside was my watch. A Patek Philippe Grand Complications. It was worth more than Braden's entire leased fleet of cars. I rarely wore it. It was ostentatious. But today wasn't a day for modesty. Today was a day for power. I strapped the heavy gold timepiece to my wrist. I felt its weight. It was a reminder. Time is money. And Braden was out of both. I looked in the full-length mirror. The man staring back at me wasn't the tired checkbook-carrying father of the bride. He wasn't the confused old man Braden had mocked. He stood tall. His shoulders were broad. His eyes were hard like flint. He looked dangerous. He looked like a godfather. He looked like a man who could stop the world with a phone call. Because he had. I picked up my sunglasses. I picked up my car keys. I didn't take the checkbook. I wouldn't be needing it today. I left the hotel room without looking back. My first stop was a small assisted living facility on the outskirts of Newport. It was a high-end place, dignified and quiet, where my brother Peter lived. I paid for his suite there just as I paid for his medical bills. Peter had given his leg for this country. The least I could do was give him comfort. I parked my car, a rented Mercedes S-Class, and walked into the lobby. Peter was waiting for me. He was sitting in his motorized wheelchair, freshly shaved, his white hair combed back neatly. He was wearing his dress blues. His medals were pinned to his chest, gleaming under the lobby lights. The Purple Heart, the Silver Star. He looked magnificent. He looked like a hero. And Braden wanted to hide him in a storage room because his wheelchair took up too much space. Because he drooled a little when he drank due to the stroke he had 5 years ago. Rage flared in my gut, again hot and sudden, but I pushed it down. Peter looked up and smiled when he saw me. His speech was a little slow, a little slurred, but his mind was as sharp as a tack. "Thomas," he said, his eyes widening, "look at you. You look like you are about to buy a casino, or blow one up." I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt in 24 hours. "You look good too, Peter. Ready to go." Peter adjusted his tie. He looked down at his medals. "I am ready, Thomas. I haven't been to a big party in years. Emily, she is a beautiful girl. I am happy for her. Even if that boy, well..." He trailed off. Even Peter, who tried to see the good in everyone, had reservations about Braden. I walked behind his chair. I gripped the handles not to push him. He could drive it himself, but to feel the connection. To feel the family bond that Braden and Emily had treated so cheaply. "Let's go, Peter," I said. We went out to the car. I helped him transfer from the chair to the passenger seat. I folded the heavy wheelchair and put it in the trunk. It was heavy, awkward work, but I did it with a fierce pride. This was my brother. He wasn't a burden. He was my blood. I got into the driver's seat and started the engine. Peter looked at me. He sensed the tension. He saw the hard set of my jaw, the way I gripped the steering wheel. "Thomas," he asked softly, "is everything all right? You seem different." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had shared a bunk bed with me, who had protected me from bullies when we were kids, who had come home from war broken, but unbroken. "Everything is exactly as it should be, Peter," I said. He paused. "So we are going to the wedding. We are going to the party." I pulled out of the parking lot and turned onto the road that led toward the ocean, toward the cliffs, toward the breakers. "No, Peter," I said, my voice calm and low. "We aren't going to a party." He looked confused. "Then what are we doing, Thomas?" I glanced at the digital clock on the dashboard. It was 8:30 a.m. The photographers would be arriving soon. The VIPs would be getting into their limousines. The curtain was about to rise on the greatest disaster of Braden Cole's life. I adjusted my sunglasses. "We are going to the theater, Peter," I said. "We are going to watch a tragedy, and we have the best seats in the house." Peter didn't ask any more questions. He just nodded. He trusted me. That was what family did. They trusted each other. I drove toward the coast. The road was smooth. The sun was shining. In 30 minutes, Braden would arrive at the venue. He would expect a red carpet. He would expect champagne. He was about to find out that the only thing waiting for him was a padlock and a parking lot full of dust. The calm before the storm was over. The thunder was about to roll. It was 9:00 sharp. I pulled the rented Mercedes into a parking spot on the street opposite the main entrance of the breakers. It was a good spot. It was shaded by an old oak tree, and it offered a perfect unobstructed view of the massive wrought iron gates that guarded the Vanderbilt estate. Peter sat beside me in the passenger seat. He adjusted his dress blues, smoothing the fabric over his chest. He looked out the window, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. "Is that the gate, Thomas?" he asked. "That is the gate," I said. "It looks closed," Peter observed. "It is closed," I said. "It is very closed." We didn't have to wait long. At 9:05, the roar of engines shattered the morning peace. A convoy appeared around the corner. It was led by Braden's silver Porsche, the one I knew was 2 weeks away from repossession. Behind him were 2 black SUVs filled with his groomsmen. They drove with the arrogance of conquering heroes. They honked their horns. They revved their engines. They were loud. They were flashy. They were exactly the kind of people who thought the rules didn't apply to them because they were wearing sunglasses that cost $500. The convoy pulled up to the main gate. I watched as Braden hopped out of the driver's seat. He was wearing a white tuxedo. He looked like a waiter at a bad casino. He adjusted his cuffs, flashed a brilliant smile at his friends, and spread his arms wide as if to embrace the mansion. "All right, boys," he shouted, his voice carrying across the street. "Let's get some content. First look photos. I want the mansion in the background. I want it to scream success." His groomsmen tumbled out of the SUVs, laughing and high-fiving. They were holding champagne bottles. They were ready to party. They walked toward the gate, expecting the heavy iron to swing open magically for them. They didn't. Braden reached the gate and stopped. His forward momentum died instantly. He frowned. He grabbed the iron bars and gave them a shake. The gates rattled, but they didn't move. A heavy industrial chain, the kind used to secure shipping containers, was wrapped around the center bars, secured by a padlock the size of a brick. "What the hell?" Braden muttered. He looked around. "Hey, security, open up. It is the groom." Nothing happened. The mansion stood silent in the distance, its windows dark and indifferent. There was no valet. There was no red carpet. There was no team of staff waiting with silver trays. One of the groomsmen, a tall guy with a man bun, pointed to something attached to the gate. "Hey," Braden read the sign. Braden looked closer. I picked up a pair of binoculars I had brought from the boat. I wanted to see his face. I wanted to see the exact moment the words hit his brain. A white laminated sign was zip-tied to the bars at eye level. It was printed in bold black letters. Private event cancelled by contract holder. No trespassing. Police will be called. I watched Braden read it. I watched his lips move. I watched the color drain from his face, leaving him looking pale and sickly against the white tuxedo. "Cancelled," he whispered. He stepped back as if the sign had burned him. He looked at the chain. He looked through the bars at the long, sweeping driveway that led up to the house. It was empty. Usually at 9 a.m. on a wedding day, the lawn would be a hive of activity. There would be trucks unloading flowers. There would be crews setting up the arch. There would be the sound of the band doing a sound check. But there was nothing. The lawn was just grass. The terrace was bare stone. The $75,000 floral arch wasn't there. The gold chairs weren't there. The stage for the jazz orchestra wasn't there. It was a void. It was a vacuum. Braden spun around, his eyes wild. He pulled his phone from his pocket. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. He dialed a number. I knew who he was calling. Michael, the venue manager. I couldn't hear Michael's side of the conversation, but I could hear Braden perfectly. He was screaming now, his voice cracking with panic. "Michael, what is going on? The gate is locked. There is a chain. Open the damn gate. I have photographers here." He paused, listening. His face went from pale to red. A deep, angry flush crept up his neck. "What do you mean cancelled? I didn't cancel anything. I am the groom. I am the star of this show. You can't cancel on me." He listened again. He started to pace back and forth in front of the locked gate, kicking at the gravel. "Sterling." "What do you mean Sterling cancelled?" "He can't do that. He just paid for it. It is my wedding." He stopped pacing. He stood still, listening to the words that were destroying his life. "He didn't pay." "What do you mean he didn't pay?" "He wrote the check. Braden's voice trailed off. He listened for another 10 seconds. Then he lowered the phone slowly. He looked at the screen as if it had bitten him. "He hung up on me," he whispered to his friends, who were now standing around him looking confused and sober. "What happened?" Braden asked the guy with the man bun. "Is it a glitch?" "It is not a glitch," Braden hissed. "It is the old man." He turned back to the gate and grabbed the bars with both hands, shaking them violently. The chain clanked, but the gate held firm. "Sterling," he screamed at the empty house. "You crazy old dinosaur! You senile old fool! What have you done?" He kicked the iron bars. He kicked them until he winced in pain, hopping on one foot in his expensive loafers. "Open this gate," he yelled, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "Open it right now. I have investors coming. I have VIPs landing in an hour. You can't do this to me." But the house didn't answer. The seagulls wheeled overhead, crying in the blue sky, but they didn't care about his investors. Braden turned to his groomsmen. His eyes were wide with terror. "Guys," he said, his voice trembling, "it is empty. Look inside. There is nothing there." They looked. They saw the truth. "Where are the flowers?" Josh asked. "Where is the band?" "Gone," Braden choked out. "It is all gone. He canceled everything." "But the investors," Josh said, the realization dawning on him. "Braden, the guys from Silicon Valley. The crypto whales. They are coming at 10:30. They are expecting a gala. They are expecting champagne and lobster." Braden ran a hand through his gelled hair, messing it up. He looked like a man who had just realized he was standing on a trap door. "They are going to show up here," he whispered. "They are going to pull up in their limos, and they are going to see a chain on the gate. They are going to see a parking lot." He looked at the sign again. "Event canceled." "They are going to think I am broke," he said. "They are going to think I am a fraud." "You are broke," Josh reminded him unhelpfully. "And you are a fraud." "Shut up," Braden snapped. "We have to fix this. We have to call someone. Call the florist. Maybe they are just late." He started dialing frantically again. I watched him. I knew exactly who he was calling. The florist, then the caterer, then the band. I watched him make call after call. I watched him get rejected time after time. I watched the hope drain out of him, leaving only a hollow panic. "She said the order was redirected," he said to his friends, dropping his hand to his side. "The flowers are at a hospital." "What about the food?" Josh asked. "I am starving." "The food," Braden said, his voice hollow. "The food is at a homeless shelter." He sent the Wagyu beef to a soup kitchen. He sank down onto the gravel, sitting with his back against the locked gate. He put his head in his hands. "He did it." He whispered. The old man actually did it. He nuked the whole thing. I lowered the binoculars. Peter looked at me. He had a small, satisfied smile on his face. "That looks like a man who just realized his check bounced," Peter said. "It is worse than that, Peter," I said. "That is a man who just realized his life bounced." I watched Braden for a moment longer. He was pulling at his hair. His friends were checking their watches, clearly wondering if they should bail before the ship went down completely. They were fair-weather friends, and the weather had just turned stormy. Braden stood up suddenly. A new thought seemed to strike him. "Emily," he shouted. "Oh God, Emily! She is on her way." He looked at his watch. It was 9:20. "She is getting her makeup done," he said. "She doesn't know. I have to call her." He fumbled with his phone again, but his hands were shaking too much. He dropped it in the dirt. He scrambled to pick it up, wiping the dust off the screen. I started the engine of the Mercedes. The low hum of the German engineering was a comforting sound. "It is time for the next act, Peter," I said. "Where are we going?" Peter asked. "To the hotel," I said. "The bride needs to know that her carriage has turned back into a pumpkin." I pulled away from the curb. As I drove past the gate, I didn't look at Braden. I didn't honk. I didn't acknowledge him. To me, he was already part of the scenery. He was just a piece of trash left outside a locked gate. The stage was empty. The audience was about to arrive, and the star of the show was locked out in the cold. It was a beautiful morning in Newport. The air was crisp. The sun was shining, and somewhere in a hotel room, my daughter was getting ready for a wedding that didn't exist. I drove toward the city center. The demolition was proceeding exactly according to plan. The bridal suite at the Hotel Viking was a scene of organized chaos and expensive perfume. I wasn't there, but I knew exactly what it looked like because I had paid for every single item in the room. I had paid for the magnum bottles of Veuve Clicquot that were popping. I had paid for the silk robes the bridesmaids were wearing. And most importantly, I had paid for the team of stylists who were currently hovering over my daughter like bees around a queen. Antoine and his team were the best in New York. I had flown them in by helicopter because Emily insisted that no one in Rhode Island knew how to contour properly. Their fee for the morning was $15,000. I pulled the Mercedes up to the hotel valet. I didn't get out immediately. I sat in the running car watching the digital clock on the dashboard. It was 9:30. Right on cue, my phone rang. It was Emily. I stared at the screen. The picture ID was a photo of us from her college graduation. She was hugging me, wearing her cap and gown, looking at me like I was her hero. It felt like a lifetime ago. I answered. I didn't say hello, I just listened. "Daddy," she screamed. Her voice was so shrill it distorted the speaker. "Daddy, tell them to stop. Tell them they are making a mistake." I held the phone a few inches from my ear. "Hello, Emily," I said calmly. "Who is making a mistake?" "Antoine," she shrieked. "He is packing up. He did half my face and now he is packing his kit. He says you fired him." I looked out the window at the hotel entrance. I saw a group of people in black outfits rolling suitcases out of the lobby. It was Antoine and his crew. They moved fast. They were professionals. "He is correct, Emily," I said. "I terminated his contract effective immediately." But why, she wailed. "It is my wedding day. I look like a clown. One eye is done and the other isn't. You can't do this to me. Fix it, Daddy. Pay him whatever he wants." "I am not paying him anything, Emily," I said. "I already paid him to leave." There was a silence on the line. A stunned, gasping silence. I could hear her breathing fast and shallow, hyperventilating. "Daddy," she whispered. "What is going on?" Braden called me. He was screaming something about a lock on the gate. He said you canceled the venue." "I did. But the guests, the investors, the press release. The press release, I asked, my voice dropping an octave. "You mean the one where Braden announces I am his new strategic advisor without my consent? The one where he uses my name to pump his crypto scheme?" She went quiet. She knew. She absolutely knew. "Braden is just trying to build our future," she stammered, but the conviction was gone. "He is ambitious, Daddy. You should respect that." "I respect ambition, Emily. I do not respect theft, and I certainly do not respect being told I am not important enough to sit in the same room as my own daughter on her wedding day." She started to cry again. Not the angry screams from before, but the terrified sobbing of a child who realizes the lights have gone out. "Daddy, please." Braden didn't mean it. He was just stressed. "He loves you. He loves my checkbook," I corrected her. "And he loves my reputation. But he made it very clear last night that he doesn't want me. He wants important people." I paused. I let the words hang in the air between us. "So I am giving him exactly what he asked for. I am removing the unimportant people. I am removing myself. I am removing your Uncle Peter. And since I am apparently not important enough to be seen, neither is my money." "No," she gasped. "No, Daddy, please. We can fix this. I will put you at the head table. I will fire the investors. Just open the gates. Send Antoine back up. Please. I can't get married like this." "You aren't getting married like this, Emily," I said. "Because there is no wedding. The venue is closed. The food is at a homeless shelter. The flowers are at the hospital." You gave the food away," she choked out. "Yes. To people who will actually appreciate it. People who won't care if the wine is vintage 1990. She made a sound like a wounded animal. It was painful to hear. It was the sound of a fantasy shattering against the hard concrete of reality. "Daddy, you are ruining my life," she sobbed. "No, Emily," I said. "I am saving it. You just don't see it yet." "I am downstairs," I added. "I am coming up." I hung up the phone. I got out of the car. Peter was waiting in the passenger seat. He looked at me with a sad expression. "She is crying, isn't she?" he asked. "She is," I said. "It had to be done, Thomas. You know that." "I know, Peter. But it doesn't make it easy." I left Peter in the car with the AC running and the radio on. I walked into the lobby. The hotel staff looked at me nervously. They knew something was happening. The sudden exodus of the hair and makeup team had caused a stir. I took the elevator to the penthouse suite. The doors opened, and I could hear the crying from the hallway. I walked to the door of suite 1402. It was ajar. I pushed it open. The room was a wreck. There were empty champagne bottles on the tables. Bridesmaid dresses were flung over chairs. In the center of the room, Emily sat on a stool in front of the vanity mirror. She looked devastating. Her hair was half curled, the other side limp and straight. Her face was a grotesque mask of half-finished beauty. One eye was smoky and dramatic with false lashes applied. The other eye was bare red and puffy from crying. Foundation covered only the left side of her face, leaving a harsh line down the middle of her nose. She looked like a broken doll. Her bridesmaids, 3 girls I had known since kindergarten, were standing around her looking useless and terrified. They held their phones, probably texting everyone they knew about the drama. When Emily saw me in the mirror, she spun around. Her eyes widened. She saw the tuxedo. She saw the Patek Philippe watch. She saw the man she had dismissed as a relic standing there looking like he owned the building. "Daddy," she whispered. She stood up. She took a step toward me, then stopped. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, then back at me. She realized how she looked. She realized that the image of perfection she had tried so hard to curate was ruined. Why, she asked, her voice trembling. "Why did you do this?" I walked into the room. The bridesmaids parted like the Red Sea. I stopped in front of her. "I didn't do this, Emily," I said softly. "You did. You and Braden." "Me?" she asked, pointing to her chest. "I just wanted a nice wedding." "No. You wanted a show. You wanted a merger. You wanted to erase your family to impress a bunch of strangers who don't care about you." I pulled out my phone. I opened the Instagram post, the one where she had deleted my name. "Who are the important people, Emily?" I asked, holding the screen up to her face. "Who are the people who make your world turn?" She stared at the screen. She looked down at the floor. "Braden said it looked cleaner," she whispered. He said your name was too old-fashioned, that it didn't fit the crypto aesthetic." "And you agreed," I said. "You agreed to erase your mother. You agreed to erase me." She didn't answer. She just cried harder, mascara running down the one finished side of her face in black streaks. I put the phone away. "Braden is at the venue right now," I told her. "He is screaming at a locked gate." "Do you know what he is worried about, Emily?" She looked up, hope flaring in her eyes for a second. "Is he worried about me?" she asked. I laughed. It was a sad, short sound. "No. He isn't asking where you are. He isn't asking if you are okay. He is worried about the investors. He is worried about the money. He is screaming that I ruined his business deal." She flinched as if I had slapped her. He didn't ask about me. Not once." She sank back onto the stool. She looked at her hand, at the engagement ring, a massive 3-carat diamond that sparkled under the vanity lights. I looked at the ring too. "Rachel checked the appraisal on that ring," I said. Emily looked up, defensive. "It is a VVS1. Braden said it cost $50,000. It is cubic zirconia, Emily. It cost $200 on Amazon." The silence in the room was absolute. The bridesmaids gasped. Emily stared at the ring. She rubbed it with her thumb as if trying to rub away the truth. "No," she whispered. "No. He wouldn't. He is broke, Emily. He owes $2 million to loan sharks. He was using this wedding to raise money to save his own skin. You weren't a bride. You were bait." She pulled the ring off her finger. She looked at it. She looked at the cheap metal that was already starting to turn her finger slightly green underneath. She threw it across the room. It hit the wall with a tinny clink and bounced under the sofa. She put her face in her hands and wailed. It was a sound of pure heartbreak, the sound of an illusion dying. I stood there and watched her cry. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to tell her it would be okay, but I couldn't. Not yet. She needed to feel this. She needed to understand the cost of her choices. The phone on the vanity table rang. It was Braden. His face popped up on the screen. Emily looked at it. She looked at me. "Answer it," I said. "Put it on speaker." She reached out a shaking hand and tapped the green button. Emily Braden shouted instantly, "Where the hell are you?" The old man locked the gate. "You need to get down here. You need to talk to him. Fix this, Emily. My investors are landing in 20 minutes. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask why she was crying. He just gave orders. Emily looked at the phone. Her face hardened. The tears stopped. She looked at me. I nodded. "I am not coming, Braden," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "What? What do you mean you aren't coming? Get in the limo. Get down here. We have a schedule." "There is no limo, Braden," she said. "And there is no wedding." "What are you talking about? You stupid—" He stopped himself, but the insult hung there unfinished. "My dad told me about the ring, Braden. He told me about the loans. He told me about the fraud." There was a silence on the other end. A terrified, guilty silence. "Emily, listen to me," Braden said, his voice changing instantly, becoming soft and manipulative. "Your dad is lying. He is jealous. He is trying to control you. Just come here, baby. We can talk. We can explain everything to the investors. Just bring your dad. We need him. We need him." That was it. The final nail. Emily looked at me. She saw the father who had stood by her, who had protected her, who had just saved her from a lifetime of misery. She took a deep breath. "You don't need him, Braden," she said. "You need a lawyer." She hung up the phone. She looked at me. The makeup was ruined. Her hair was a mess. But her eyes were clear. "I am sorry, Daddy," she whispered. "I am so sorry." I opened my arms. She ran to me. She buried her face in my tuxedo jacket, ruining the $12,000 vicuña wool with cheap foundation and tears. I didn't care. I held her tight. "It is okay, baby," I said. "It is okay." We stood there for a moment in the wreckage of the bridal suite. Then I pulled back. I wiped a smudge of mascara from her cheek. "Wash your face," I said. "Put on some jeans." "Why?" she asked, sniffing. "Because we have one more stop to make," I said. "Braden is waiting for his bride. I think we should go deliver his wedding present personally." She looked at me confused. "What present?" I smiled. A cold, wolfish smile. "The truth, Emily. We are going to give him the truth." She nodded. A fierce look came into her eyes. A look I recognized. It was the Sterling look. "Give me 5 minutes," she said. She walked into the bathroom. I turned to the bridesmaids. "You girls can go home," I said. "The show is over." They grabbed their bags and fled. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. Peter was waiting in the car. The engine was running. The panic was over. Now it was time for the pain. It was 10:30 in the morning, and the street outside the breakers had transformed into a parking lot of confusion and high-end automotive engineering. The VIPs had arrived. The crypto whales, the angel investors, the tech disruptors, they were all there, stepping out of their black limousines and town cars, expecting to walk onto a manicured lawn with a glass of champagne in hand. Instead, they were standing on the dusty roadside, adjusting their ties and shielding their eyes from the sun, staring at a locked iron gate and a groom who looked like he was having a cardiac event. Braden was no longer the confident master of the universe who had toasted his own genius the night before. He was sweating profusely. His white tuxedo jacket was stained with dark patches of perspiration under the arms. His hair gel was melting, running down his forehead. He was running from one group of guests to another, waving his arms frantically, trying to sell a lie that was becoming less plausible by the second. "It is just a technical difficulty," he was shouting to a group of men in Italian suits. "A security glitch with the electronic locks. We are bypassing the system now. Just a few more minutes. Please bear with us." He spotted another group arriving and ran over to them. "Hey guys, so good to see you. Yeah, sorry about the wait." The venue manager lost the master key. "Can you believe it? Incompetence, right? Hard to find good help these days." He was manic. He was desperate. And he was failing. I watched it all as I turned the corner. I wasn't driving the rented Mercedes anymore. I had returned it to the agency an hour ago. For this moment, for this specific entrance, I needed something that spoke a language Braden's investors would understand. I was driving my own car, which I had instructed my driver to bring down from Boston early this morning. A vintage 1965 Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud. Black. Immaculate. A car that didn't just say money, it said old money. It said permanence. I pulled the massive vehicle up to the curb right in front of the locked gate, blocking the view of Braden's leased Porsche. The crowd turned. They stopped talking. They looked at the car. They knew quality when they saw it. I killed the engine. I took a moment to adjust my cufflinks. "Ready, Peter?" I asked. Peter, sitting beside me in his dress blues, nodded. "Let's give them a show, Thomas." I opened the door and stepped out. The sun hit my midnight blue tuxedo. I stood to my full height. I put on my sunglasses. I didn't look at Braden. I walked around to the passenger side and opened the door for Peter. I helped him out. I set up his wheelchair. He sat down and adjusted his cap, the medals on his chest catching the light. A murmur went through the crowd. They recognized the authority. They recognized the gravity. Braden saw me. He froze for a second, staring at me as if I were a ghost. Then his face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He forgot the investors. He forgot the act. He forgot the charming persona he had cultivated for years. He charged at me. He ran across the gravel, his expensive loafers slipping in the dust. He looked deranged. "You," he screamed, pointing a shaking finger at my face. "You old bastard." The crowd gasped. The investors exchanged shocked glances. This wasn't the behavior of a CEO. This was the behavior of a cornered animal. Braden didn't stop. He got right in my face, invading my personal space, smelling of fear and stale alcohol. "Open the gate," he shouted, spittle flying from his mouth. "Open it right now. You are killing me. You are ruining everything. Give me the key." I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. I looked him up and down, taking in the sweat, the panic, the cheap desperation. "I don't have a key, Braden," I said, my voice calm and projecting clearly to the silent crowd. "I don't work here. I am just a guest." "Don't play games with me," he yelled, grabbing the lapel of my jacket. "You canceled it. You called them. You told them to lock it. Why? Why would you do this to me?" I looked at his hand on my suit. I looked at him. "Remove your hand." "Braden," I said softly, "or my security detail will remove it for you." He looked around. Two of my men, large ex-military types I had hired for the day, were stepping out of a trailing SUV. Braden let go. He backed away slightly, but he kept screaming. "Tell them," he shouted, turning to the investors who were watching with morbid fascination. "Tell them you are senile. Tell them you made a mistake. Tell them you forgot to pay the bill. Fix this, Thomas." I looked at the crowd, at the Sutton. I saw Mr. Henderson, the potential lead investor, standing near the front, looking confused and angry. I saw the faces of men and women who controlled millions of dollars. They were waiting for an explanation. I smiled. It was the smile of a shark that has just smelled blood in the water. I adjusted my jacket, smoothing the fabric where he had grabbed it. I took off my sunglasses and folded them slowly. "You are right, Braden," I said, my voice booming in the silence. I turned to the crowd. I made eye contact with Henderson. He is right, everyone. I am just an old man, a dinosaur. Isn't that what you called me last night, Braden? Braden's eyes widened. He shook his head frantically. No, I didn't. I never… Yes, you did, I continued, walking slowly toward the crowd. You told your friends I was a clueless old man, a wallet with legs. You said I wouldn't notice if you used my name to sell a fraudulent investment. The crowd murmured louder. The word fraudulent hung in the air like toxic smoke. I stopped in front of Henderson. I am Thomas Sterling, I said, extending my hand. I believe my future son-in-law told you I was going to be a strategic advisor for his company. Henderson took my hand. He looked wary. Yes, that is what the prospectus says. Well, I said, raising my voice so everyone could hear. I am afraid my memory isn't what it used to be, because I seem to have forgotten signing any such agreement. In fact, I seem to have forgotten why I should spend $500,000 on a wedding for a man who plans to steal from you. Steal. Braden shrieked, his voice cracking. That is a lie. He is lying. He is crazy. He has dementia. Don't listen to him. I reached into the inside pocket of my tuxedo. I pulled out a folded document. It wasn't the checkbook. It was the financial report Rachel had sent me. I handed it to Henderson. This is a summary of Braden Cole's current financial standing, I said. 28 maxed-out credit cards. $2 million in unsecured debt to private lenders. A judgment for fraud in New York. Henderson opened the document. He scanned it quickly. His face turned red. He looked at Braden. Is this true? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. No. Braden stammered, backing away. No, it is fake. He forged it. He is trying to sabotage me. Henderson threw the papers at Braden's feet. The pages scattered in the wind, landing in the dust. You told me you were liquid, Henderson roared. You told me you had zero debt. You tried to get me to sign a $5 million check on Monday. It is a bridge loan, Braden cried, desperation clawing at his throat. Just a bridge loan until the IPO. There is no IPO, I said, cutting him down. There is no company, Braden. There is just a shell game and a lot of debt. And you were using this wedding, using these people, using my daughter to pay for your mistakes. The crowd began to move. It wasn't a panic, it was a retreat. Phones were coming out. People were making calls, canceling checks, instructing their lawyers. They were distancing themselves from the blast radius. Braden looked around wildly. He saw his future evaporating. He saw the investors turning their backs. He saw his groomsmen retreating toward the SUVs. He looked at me with pure hatred. You ruined me, he hissed. You planned this. You waited until now. Why? Why didn't you just cancel it yesterday? Because, Braden, I said, stepping closer to him, until I was looking down into his sweating face. Because you said you only wanted important people here. You wanted the people who matter. I gestured to the retreating crowd, to the locked gate, to the emptiness of his big day. I just wanted to make sure the important people knew exactly who you are. He lunged at me. It was a clumsy, desperate swing. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to silence the truth, but he never connected. My brother Peter, sitting in his wheelchair 10 feet away, moved his hand. He wasn't fast, but he was a marksman. He didn't shoot. He simply drove his heavy motorized chair forward, ramming Braden in the shins with the metal footrests. Braden howled in pain and crumpled to the ground, clutching his legs. Peter looked down at him, his face impassive. Watch your step, son, Peter said. The terrain is rough out here. Braden lay in the dirt, his white tuxedo ruined, his dignity gone. He looked up at me, tears of pain and rage streaming down his face. Where is Emily? He screamed. Where is she? She won't let you do this. She loves me. She will fix this. I looked down at him. The dust from my brother Peter's wheelchair tires had barely settled when the second wave of my assault began. Braden was still on the ground, clutching his bruised shins, gasping for air, his white tuxedo now a ruined canvas of dirt and sweat. The investors were watching him with a mixture of confusion and disgust, but they hadn't left yet. They were business people. They needed data. They needed to know if this was just a family squabble or a financial crater. That is when the passenger door of the Rolls-Royce opened again. Rachel Goldstein stepped out. She didn't look like a wedding guest. She looked like an executioner in a Chanel suit. She held a stack of thick blue folders in her arms. She walked past me, past Peter, and stopped directly in front of Mr. Henderson, the venture capitalist Braden had been grooming for months. Mr. Henderson. Rachel said, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd like a diamond cutter. Since the wedding ceremony has been cancelled and there is no reception to attend, perhaps you would like to use this time to review the updated due diligence on Mr. Cole's company. Braden saw her. His eyes bulged. He tried to scramble to his feet, ignoring the pain in his legs. "No," he screamed, reaching out a dirty hand. "Don't take it. It is confidential. It is proprietary." She is lying. Henderson looked at Braden scrambling in the dirt. Then he looked at Rachel. He took the folder. "What is this?" he asked. "That is the reality," Rachel said simply. "It contains the forensic accounting of Braden Cole's personal and professional finances for the last 3 years. It includes his 28 maxed-out credit cards, his repossession notices, and the judgment against him for fraud in New York State." Henderson opened the folder. The other investors crowded around him, like sharks sensing blood in the water. Rachel handed out copies to the others. Braden was panting, standing up now, swaying unsteadily. "It is a lie," he shouted. "Those are forged. Thomas Sterling forged them because he hates me. He is trying to ruin the merger." Henderson didn't look up. He was flipping through the pages, his face turning a darker shade of red with every line he read. "Shell companies," he muttered, reading aloud. "Zero liquidity. 2 million in unsecured high-interest loans." He looked up at Braden, up at Tug. His eyes were cold. "You told me you were debt-free, Braden. You told me the 5 million was for expansion, not for a bailout." "It is expansion." Braden lied, his voice cracking. "The debt is... It is structured leverage. It is a tax strategy. You wouldn't understand the complexity." Henderson laughed. It was a harsh bark of a laugh. "I understand leverage, son. This isn't leverage. This is a corpse." Rachel stepped forward again. She pulled a tablet from her bag. "There is one more thing, Mr. Henderson," she said. "Mr. Sterling recorded a conversation last night at the venue. We thought you might be interested in hearing how Mr. Cole refers to his valued partners when he thinks no one is listening." "No!" Braden shrieked. He lunged toward Rachel, but my security detail stepped in his path, blocking him with a wall of muscle. Rachel tapped the screen. She turned the volume up to maximum. Braden's voice, recorded less than 12 hours ago, echoed across the silent street. The quality was crystal clear. "This wedding is the golden key. The moment I say I do tomorrow, the merger is real." The investors went quiet, listening to the ghost of Braden's arrogance. "Do you know what that name means in the logistics world? It means trust. It means stability." Then came the part that made Henderson's jaw clench. "Those investors, the crypto whales, they are just fat sheep waiting to be sheared. We take the money, we pay off my debts, we funnel the rest into offshore accounts, and then the company sadly goes bankrupt due to market volatility." Oops. Oops. The word hung in the air. Rachel stopped the recording. Braden stood there frozen. He looked small. He looked cheap. The facade of the tech visionary had completely dissolved, revealing the petty grifter underneath. Henderson slowly closed the blue folder. He walked up to Braden. He was a big man, a man who had built his own fortune with his bare hands before moving into tech. "You called us sheep," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Braden shook his head, tears streaming down his face. No, that was taken out of context. I was joking. It was a bachelor party. We were drunk. Henderson didn't listen. He stepped closer, invading Braden's space. "You tried to use me," he said. "You tried to use my reputation to steal $5 million. You looked me in the eye yesterday and shook my hand while planning to bankrupt me." I... Braden stammered. Henderson raised his hand, and for a second I thought he was going to punch him. Instead, he slapped Braden. It wasn't a closed fist punch. It was an open-handed slap of pure disrespect. It was the kind of slap you give to a misbehaving child or a thief you catch with his hand in your pocket. The sound of flesh hitting flesh cracked like a whip. Braden stumbled back, holding his cheek, his eyes wide with shock. "You are garbage," Henderson spat. He turned to me. He walked over to where I was standing by the Rolls-Royce. He looked at me searchingly. "Mr. Sterling," he said, "you are listed in the prospectus as the senior strategic advisor. Braden told us you vetted the company. He told us you were backing him with your entire logistics empire. Is any of that true?" I looked at Henderson. Then I looked at Braden, who was watching me with a desperate, pleading look in his eyes, begging me silently to save him, to lie for him one last time. I adjusted my cufflinks. I shrugged my shoulders. "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice calm and indifferent, "I have never seen that prospectus in my life. And as for advising him," I gestured to the locked gate and the empty driveway. "My daughter's fiancé told me last night that I wasn't important enough to sit in the main room. He told me I was a dinosaur who belonged in the annex with the storage crates. So I did what any unimportant person would do." I stepped aside. I looked directly at Braden. "I don't know this man," I said. "I am just a father-in-law who was shoved into a warehouse. I have no business relationship with him whatsoever." That was the signal. The rats knew the ship was not just sinking, it was already at the bottom of the ocean. Henderson turned to the other investors. "Let's go," he barked. "Call legal. I want a freeze on any pending transfers. And someone call the district attorney. This is attempted fraud." The crowd dispersed instantly. It was like watching a tide go out. Drivers jumped into the black limousines. Engines roared to life. Phones were pressed to ears as lawyers were summoned and deals were killed. Braden ran after them. "Wait!" he screamed, running alongside Henderson's car as it pulled away. "Wait, please. It is a misunderstanding. I can explain. Don't leave. The money. I need the money." The car didn't stop. It accelerated, leaving Braden coughing in a cloud of dust. He turned to the next car. It swerved around him. He ran from vehicle to vehicle, banging on the windows, begging, pleading, crying. But the tinted windows remained up. The important people, the people he had staked his life on, were leaving him behind without a second glance. Within 2 minutes, the street was empty. The convoy of wealth and power had vanished back toward the airport, leaving only silence and dust in its wake. Braden stood alone in the middle of the road. His white tuxedo was gray with dirt. His cheek was red from the slap. His hair was wild. He looked around at the empty street, at the locked gate, at the ghost of the future he thought he had secured. He was totally, completely alone. He turned slowly to look at me. I was still standing by the Rolls-Royce with Peter. I hadn't moved. I hadn't needed to. I watched him realize that the game was over. The checkmate had been delivered, and he hadn't even seen the pieces moving until it was too late. He took a step towards me, but he stopped when my security guards crossed their arms. "You!" He croaked, his voice hoarse from screaming. "You destroyed me." I shook my head. "No, Braden," I said. "You destroyed yourself. I just turned on the lights so everyone could see the wreck." I opened the back door of the Rolls-Royce. "Peter," I said, I think we are done here. Peter nodded, looking at Braden with pity, not anger. Son Peter said to him, "Next time you want to fight a war, make sure you don't pick a fight with the man who supplies the ammunition." I got into the car. I didn't look at Braden again. He was standing there in the dust, a king of nothing ruling over an empire of dirt. The demolition was complete. The site was cleared. Now it was time to rebuild the only thing that mattered: my family. The silence that followed the departure of the investors was short-lived. It was shattered by the sound of feet pounding against the gravel. Emily ran past me. She ran past Peter. She didn't look at us. Her eyes were locked on the man kneeling in the dust, the man she had planned to spend the rest of her life with. Braden wasn't looking at her. He was scrambling on his hands and knees, moving with the frantic, jerky motions of a starving animal. He was picking up the pieces of the torn prospectus that Henderson had thrown at him. He was trying to fit the shredded paper back together as if he could glue his future back into existence with dust and sweat. Emily stopped a few feet away from him. She stood there breathing hard, her chest heaving under the white t-shirt. She looked down at the man in the ruined tuxedo. "Braden," she said. Her voice was trembling, but it was loud enough to cut through the morning air. "Braden, look at me." He didn't look up. He kept grabbing at the scraps of paper, clutching them to his chest. "It is fine," he muttered to himself, his voice high and unstable. "It is fine. I can tape it. I can explain it. I can call them back. I just need a new contact. I just need one yes." Braden, Emily shouted. "Stop it! It is over." He froze. His hands stopped moving. He slowly lifted his head. His eyes were red-rimmed, wild, and terrifyingly empty. He looked at Emily, but he didn't see his fiancée. He didn't see the woman he was supposed to love. He saw a broken tool. He saw a key that had failed to open the lock. He stood up. He swayed slightly on his feet. The rage that had been directed at me shifted instantly to her. It was a physical transformation. His face twisted into a snarl. "You," he hissed. He took a step toward her. "This is your fault," he screamed. Emily stepped back, shocked. "My fault? Braden, I just got here. I didn't know." "You didn't control him," Braden roared, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You told me you could handle him. You said he was soft. You said he would do whatever you asked, because he was desperate for your love." He spat on the ground. "You lied to me, Emily. You said he was a wallet. You said he was safe. Look at this. Look at what he did. He destroyed me." Emily stared at him. The confusion in her eyes was melting away, replaced by a horror that was painful to watch. She was seeing the mask slip. She was seeing the monster underneath. "Braden, you are scaring me," she whispered. We can figure this out. We don't need the investors. We have each other." Braden laughed. It wasn't a laugh. It was a bark. A harsh, jagged sound that had no humor in it. "Have each other," he mocked. "What good are you to me without the money, Emily? What good are you without the connection? Do you think I can pay $2 million in debt with your love? Do you think the guys who are going to break my legs care about our relationship?" He stepped closer, invading her space, looming over her. "I needed that capital," he screamed, spraying spittle onto her face. "I needed that $5 million today. Not tomorrow. Today. I have a deadline, Emily. And because of your father, because of your incompetence, I am a dead man." Emily stood her ground. She wiped the spittle from her cheek. Her spine straightened. "Is that all this was?" she asked, her voice gaining strength. "Is that all I was? A bailout? A transaction?" Braden sneered. He looked at her with pure contempt. "Don't be naive," he said. "Of course it was a transaction. Look at you, Emily. You aren't special. You aren't brilliant. You are Thomas Sterling's daughter. That is your only value. That is the only reason I am here." The words hung in the air, brutal and final. They were the truth. The ugly, naked truth that I had tried to protect her from. But she had to hear it. She had to hear it from him. Emily didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She looked at him as if she was seeing a stranger. "So you never loved me?" she asked. It was a quiet question, but it carried the weight of 3 wasted years. Braden rolled his eyes. "Love," he scoffed. "Love is for poor people. I was trying to build an empire. And you were just the acquisition cost. And turns out you were too expensive." He turned away from her, dismissing her as if she were a waitress who had brought the wrong order. He looked back at the ground, at the torn papers. "I have to fix this," he muttered. "I have to call someone." He didn't get to finish the sentence. I stepped forward. I moved out from the shadow of the Rolls-Royce. I walked past the locked gate. I walked onto the gravel. "That is enough, Braden," I said. He spun around. He saw me. The fear came back, but it was mixed with a dangerous, reckless anger. "Stay away from me, old man," he warned. "You have done enough." I walked until I was standing between him and Emily. I turned my back to him for a second to look at my daughter. "Are you okay?" I asked her. She looked at me. Her eyes were wide, filled with shock, but she nodded. "I am okay, Daddy," she whispered. I turned back to Braden. "You are going to leave," I said. "You are going to walk away from this gate. You are going to walk down that road. And you are never going to say my daughter's name again." Braden looked at me. He looked at the empty driveway. He looked at his ruined future. And he snapped. "No," he screamed. "I am not leaving empty-handed. You owe me. You owe me $5 million. He lunged. It was a fast, desperate move. He reached into his jacket pocket. I didn't know if he had a weapon. I didn't wait to find out. I didn't have to move. From behind the Rolls-Royce, 2 shadows detached themselves. My security team. Former Navy SEALs. They moved with a speed that made Braden look like he was moving in slow motion. One of them, a man named Davis, intercepted Braden before he could take 2 steps. Davis didn't hit him. He simply stepped into Braden's path and used Braden's own momentum against him. He grabbed Braden's arm, twisted it behind his back, and swept his legs. Braden hit the ground hard, face first into the gravel. The air left his lungs in a whoosh. Davis placed a knee on Braden's back, pinning him to the earth. He looked at me, waiting for instructions. "Let him up," I said. Davis stepped back. Braden scrambled to his knees, coughing, spitting out dirt and blood. He looked up at us. He looked at the guards. He looked at me. He looked at Emily. He realized he was physically outmatched, just as he had been financially outmatched. He stayed on his knees, panting. Emily stepped out from behind me. She walked up to him. She looked down at the man she had almost married. She reached into her pocket. She pulled out the engagement ring. The fake diamond. The cubic zirconia that he had told her was worth $50,000. She looked at it. She held it up to the sun. It sparkled cheaply. "You called me an idiot," she said, her voice steady. "You said I wasn't special." She dropped her hand. "You are right, Braden. I was an idiot. I was an idiot for believing that someone like you could ever understand what love is." She threw the ring. It hit him in the chest. It bounced off his dirty tuxedo shirt and landed in the dust next to the torn checks. "It is fake," she said. Rachel checked. "Just like you. Just like this wedding. Just like your company. It is all fake." Braden looked at the ring. He didn't pick it up. He looked at Emily. For the first time, there was no arrogance in his eyes. Only fear. "Emily," he croaked. "Don't," she said. "Just don't." She turned around. She turned her back on him. She turned her back on the lies, on the gaslighting, on the manipulation. She looked at me. Her face crumpled. The strength that had held her up for the last 5 minutes gave way. She was just a girl who had had her heart broken. "Daddy," she sobbed. I opened my arms. She ran into them. She buried her face in my shoulder, holding onto me as if I was the only solid thing in a world that had turned to liquid. I wrapped my arms around her. I held her tight. I rested my chin on the top of her head. "I have got you, Emily," I whispered. "I have got you. I am here." We stood there for a long time. The wind blew off the ocean, rustling the trees. The sun beat down on the empty venue. Behind us, Braden Cole struggled to his feet. He looked at us one last time. He looked at the wall of security guards. He looked at the locked gate. He turned and began to walk. He walked away from the mansion. He walked away from the Rolls-Royce. He walked down the long, dusty road toward the main highway, alone, defeated, and broke. I watched him go over Emily's shoulder. I watched him until he was just a small white speck in the distance. Then, I pulled back. I looked at my daughter. Her face was streaked with tears, but she looked lighter. She looked like a weight had been lifted from her soul. "Let's go," I said. "Where?" she asked, wiping her eyes. "Lunch," I said. "I know a place. It isn't fancy. It doesn't have truffles. But they make the best lobster roll in Rhode Island. And they let anyone in. Even unimportant people like us." She smiled. It was a watery, weak smile, but it was real. "I would like that, Daddy," she said. I led her to the car. I opened the door for her. Peter was waiting inside, smiling. "Good job, kid," Peter said to her as she climbed in. "Good aim with the ring." "Thanks, Uncle Peter," she said, sniffing. I got into the driver's seat. I started the engine. I drove away from the breakers. I drove away from the disaster. The demolition was over. The site was cleared. The debris had been hauled away. Now the real work could begin. The work of rebuilding. And I was ready for it. It wasn't the grand ballroom at the breakers. There were no crystal chandeliers, no silk napkins, and certainly no ice sculptures of swans. It was a place called Salty's, a small weathered seafood shack, perched on the end of a pier, where the smell of old wood and frying batter was thicker than the sea mist. The tables were covered in red and white checkered plastic. The napkins were paper dispensed from a metal box. The lighting came from neon beer signs buzzing against the wall. It was perfect. I sat at a corner table with my brother Peter, my attorney Rachel, and my daughter Emily. We were the only people there wearing tuxedos and evening gowns, which drew a few stares from the locals. But after the day we had had, I didn't care. I felt more at home here among the fishermen and the tourists eating with their hands than I ever would have felt in that ballroom with Braden's crypto whales. We ordered a feast. 4 pounds of steamers, 3 baskets of fried clams, and the biggest lobster rolls on the menu. We ate like people who had just survived a shipwreck. We ate with a hunger that was physical and emotional. Emily sat next to me. She was still wearing the jeans and white t-shirt she had changed into at the hotel. Her hair was pulled back, messy and real. She was attacking a lobster claw with a pair of metal crackers, butter dripping down her chin. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were puffy. Her hands were bare of any rings. But for the first time in 6 months, she looked like my daughter again. The pretension was gone. The affectation was gone. The desperate need to impress people who didn't matter had been washed away by the tears and the ocean wind. She put the cracker down. She wiped her hands on a paper napkin. She looked around the table at Peter, who was happily dipping a clam in broth, at Rachel, who had finally taken off her blazer and was relaxing with a beer, and then at me. "Daddy," she said quietly. I stopped eating. I looked at her. "Yes, sweetheart." I am sorry, she said. I know I said. You already said that. No, she shook her head, tears welling up again, but she blinked them back. I mean, I am really sorry. Not just for today. For the last year. For erasing you. For erasing Mom. She took a deep breath. I got so caught up in it, Daddy. Braden. He made me feel like I wasn't enough. Like our family wasn't enough. He made me feel like I had to be this shiny, polished version of myself to be worthy of him. And I let him do it. I let him treat you like a wallet because I thought that was the price of admission to his world. She reached out and took my hand. Her grip was strong. I forgot who I was, she whispered. I forgot that I am a Sterling, and Sterlings don't erase their family. I squeezed her hand. I felt a lump in my throat the size of a fist. This was the moment. This was the return on investment I had been fighting for. Not the money. This. You were lost, Emily, I said gently. It happens. The lights get too bright and you lose your way. But you found your way back. That is what matters. You stood up to him. You walked away. She laughed a dry sound. I walked away with nothing, she said. I quit my job because Braden said wives of CEOs don't work. I gave up my apartment. I have nothing, Daddy. I am 30 years old, and I am starting from zero. I smiled. I reached into the inside pocket of my tuxedo jacket. I pulled out a thick white envelope. You aren't starting from zero, I said. I slid the envelope across the plastic tablecloth. It stopped in front of her. What is this? She asked. Open it. She picked it up. She opened the flap. She pulled out a bank draft. She looked at the number. Her eyes went wide. $300,000, she read, breathless. Daddy, what? I leaned forward. I told you I canceled the wedding, I said. I lost the deposits. That is the price of doing business. But the rest of it, the catering balance, the flowers, the band, the lighting, I got the refunds. It turns out vendors are very understanding when you threaten to sue them for complicity in a fraud, or when you just offer to pay their cancellation fees immediately. I tapped the check. That is the money I saved today, Emily. $300,000. She tried to hand it back. I can't take this, she said. It is your money. You already spent so much. No, I said, pushing her hand back. It was money allocated for a wedding. There was no wedding, so now it is capital. I looked her in the eye. This is your seed money, Emily, but there are conditions, strict conditions. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Anything. Condition 1, I said. You do not use a penny of this on a man. Not Braden. Not anyone else. You don't buy love. Agreed, she said. Condition 2. You use this to build something of your own. Go back to school. Start a business. Buy a house in your own name. Build a life that no one can take away from you. A life where you are the CEO. She looked at the check, then at me. She sat up straighter. I will, she said. I promise. Just then the volume on the television mounted in the corner of the restaurant went up. The bartender had turned it up. Breaking news, the anchor announced. We all looked up. The screen showed footage from the airport. It was shaky cell phone video, but the image was clear. Police cars with flashing lights surrounded a silver Porsche. Officers were leading a man away in handcuffs. He was still wearing a dirty, ruined white tuxedo. It was Braden. Police have arrested local tech entrepreneur Braden Cole at TF Green Airport, the reporter said. Cole was attempting to board a flight to the Cayman Islands. He has been charged with multiple counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and grand larceny. Authorities say the arrest was triggered by a tip from a disgruntled investor and a dossier of evidence provided by the district attorney's office earlier today. The screen cut to a close-up of Braden. He looked wild. He was shouting at the camera, screaming that he was innocent, that he was important, that this was all a mistake. Then he was shoved into the back of a squad car, and the door slammed shut. The bar went quiet for a second. Then people went back to their conversations, indifferent to the tragedy of a man who thought he was a king. Emily watched the screen until the image changed to the weather forecast. She didn't look sad. She looked relieved. She looked like someone watching a tumor being removed. "He really thought he could run," she said. "He forgot the first rule of logistics," I said, picking up my drink. "You can't outrun the manifest. Eventually, everything gets accounted for." I raised my glass. It wasn't crystal. It was a thick, heavy pint glass filled with cheap domestic beer. It was cold, and it was honest. Peter raised his glass. Rachel raised hers. Emily picked up her iced tea. "To Braden Cole," I said. They looked at me surprised. "To Braden Cole," I repeated. "For teaching us a valuable lesson. He taught us that important people aren't the ones in the magazines. They aren't the ones with the crypto wallets." I looked at my brother, the war hero. I looked at my lawyer, the shark who protected me. I looked at my daughter who had found her spine. The important people are the ones sitting at this table, the ones who stay when the money runs out. Emily smiled, a real radiant smile that lit up the dingy restaurant. "To the important people," she said. We clinked glasses. "And to freedom," I added, taking a long drink. "Congratulations on your divorce, Emily. It is the best wedding gift I could ever give you." She laughed, and this time it was a sound of pure joy. We finished our meal in the warm glow of the neon sign, safe in the knowledge that while we might have lost a wedding, we had gained something far more precious. We had our family back, and no amount of money could ever buy that. A person's true worth is never measured by a VIP guest list or virtual currency, but by character and sincerity. Sometimes true love demands a necessary cruelty to save loved ones from dangerous delusions. Thomas taught his daughter the most valuable lesson of all: never trade family and self-respect for fake glamour. The real important people are not the ones who drink your champagne, but the ones who stay at the table to share a simple meal when the spotlight fades and the money runs out. Did you find Thomas's calculated destruction of the fraud satisfying? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe right now so you don't miss the next dramatic revenge story. What would you have done if you were in Thomas's shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below.